Could UK litter pickers be at risk of receiving £150 fines for doing the thing that they volunteer to do? That seems like a really strange question to ask, but it's a concern on the lips of many UK litter pickers currently, given recent news. There's a good chance you heard about this news story in October. A woman was fined for pouring coffee dregs down the drain. This took the internet by storm, with a seemingly unanimous response being that she hadn't done anything wrong. Even people who accepted that she maybe had technically committed an offence thought that it paled in comparison to that of, big companies, and the whole thing seemed out of proportion. Let's talk about the facts. On the 10th of October, Berkey Yezilut was approached by 3 enforcement officers and issued with a £150 fixed penalty notice after pouring the coffee dregs from her reusable cup into a street drain. According to BBC News reporting at the time, she told the officers she had no idea this was an offence and inquired as to what she should have done with the coffee dregs, and they told her she should have poured them into a nearby bin. They also informed her that she had breached the Environmental Protection Act, Section 33 specifically. Let's take a look at that. So what was the actual offence? Well, here is Section 33 of the Environmental Protection Act, and you can ignore most of it. The only part we need to focus on is this. A person shall not treat, keep, or dispose of controlled waste in a manner likely to cause pollution of the environment or harm to human health. So there you go. That clears it up, right? Unless you're not entirely sure what controlled waste is. Most waste produced in the UK by businesses, by households, and by everyone is technically controlled waste. So is coffee controlled waste? Well, in some circumstances, yes, but not necessarily always. There isn't any actual definitive list of what controlled waste is, only sort of vague guidelines, so it's difficult to say whether or not coffee was controlled waste. I guess it was, because she got fined for it. But you can't find that information out by, searching it online or contacting your local authorities. That seems wrong to me. Coffee, and more specifically milk and sugar in coffee, aren't necessarily good for water systems. Street drains lead into other waterways, like rivers, so it's reasonable to try and limit contamination to them. Anyone who works in hospitality or retail or other businesses handling large quantities of milk will know that there are specific procedures for disposing of waste milk, because it is a criminal offence to dispose of milk by pouring it down the drain. Most people should know that, but I can guarantee there's someone watching this video right now who, as part of their job, regularly pours milk down the drain and had no idea they were committing a criminal offence. That's scary, isn't it? I can say that I have worked in several supermarkets where this happens, where management are aware of it and even encourage it. In fact, it's such a big problem that I'm going to have to make a whole separate video just about milk being poured down drains. That's something to look forward to. But I'm going to try and keep this one concise. Why is it a problem? Well, milk is oxygen hungry. The bacteria that feeds on milk uses the oxygen that would otherwise be used by fish and other life forms in that water. So by pouring milk into a river, you're essentially suffocating an ecosystem. That's not very nice for the fish. How bad is milk really? Well, milk has a biological oxygen demand of 80,000 to 120,000 milligrams per litre. That number doesn't really mean anything on its own, so let's put it into context with, let's say, pigs and cow slurry. They range from 15,000 to 30,000 milligrams per litre, and human waste, as in the sewage that we flush down our toilets, is a meagre 300 to 400 milligrams per litre. So milk really is at the top of the table. It's scary just how much oxygen it demands. So while the police aren't going to be knocking on your doors for pouring a half pint of milk down the drain, it's easy to see why businesses should be fined for this and why we need to make sure it doesn't happen. It's also understandable why we need to be cautious of what gets poured into drains in public streets too. I mean, coffee dregs in one drain doesn't, in my opinion, actually qualify as likely to pollute the environment. But regularly disposing drinks containing milk into multiple street drains could soon add up and have a significant impact. So there needs to be education, if not more consequences. However, I want to make it completely clear at this point that I do not agree with the fines that Yezelye was issued with, and that the internet, and for once we all seem to be in agreement on this, pointed out that the Richmond drain under a bus stop was probably likely to receive a lot more regular pollutants from the road. And being a district in London, our bigger issue might be with the sewage discharge from water companies who raise our prices and then allow sewage to flow into our rivers over and over again, whilst not investing into the infrastructure to prevent this. Take a look at this BBC News report from 2024. Raw sewage spills into England rivers and seas doubles in 2023. According to the Environment Agency, there were 3.6 million hours of spills compared to 1.75 million hours in 2022. It's not just a problem, it's a problem that is seemingly getting worse. Just take a look at this map for 2023. All of these red blobs were points where sewage was discharged into the water systems. Let's take this one, for example. This sewer storm overflow spilled 239 times for 4,995 hours, or 208 days non-stop. That is a cumulative spillage of sewage into water that lasted for over half a year. Up until this point, everything in this video has been scripted, but now we're going for a live map. This is current. Every single one of these red exclamation marks is a recent sewage spillage. This is somewhere where we have recently been discharging. All of the little brown little poos are currently live discharges. We're going to zoom in on London since that's where this story took place. And you can see this kind of big poo swirl. This is all affected areas. This is discharge flowing down the Thames, and just before Richmond it seems to clean up, and then just after Richmond there's more of it coming in. Where did this story take place? Well, it was at Richmond Station, right here. This is the street drain which the coffee dregs were poured into, and a 5 or 10 minute walk away is the Thames. And let's look at this discharge point. Back in July of this year, there was a discharge event that lasted for nearly 10 hours. 10 hours of sewage being pumped straight out into this river versus some dregs. It's easy to see why people didn't think the fines were fair. That's pretty alarming data and definitely something that needs to be tackled more. In this case, Richmond Council did cancel the penalty, and they also stated that, you know, there's a reasonable appeal process, and if she'd gone through the appeals process, that it probably would have been thrown out anyway. So this does feel like the right outcome. Education and warnings seem more appropriate in this case for something that most people will not realize in this offense. I'll repeat again, I can guarantee there are people watching this video who did not know that milk was so harmful, and people who work in places where they pour milk down the drains who do not realize that is an offense. If you Google whether or not you're allowed to pour coffee dregs or other drinks into street drains, you'll find very little information, and most of the information will be people talking about this recent fine. This recent case is the most up-to-date information, and even within that, there's no actual explanations. It's just like, hey, this happened. Why am I talking about this? Well, partly because of that, the lack of information out there. Hopefully this might open a few more eyes. If you hadn't heard about this news story, well, now you have, and now you know. I'm also talking about this because, as I mentioned at the top of the video, UK litter pickers could be at risk of receiving this very same fine. The UK litter picking community, of which I'm an active member, are people who go out in their own free time and with their own money and resources clean up the places they live, primarily through litter picking, bagging up rubbish and leaving it for the council to collect. There is a problem. UK litter pickers tend to, whilst picking, find containers full of liquids, which we pour out into bushes, into the grass, into the street gullies, gutters, and into drains. Here's some footage of me pouring out Lucasade from 2004. This is a recent video I put on YouTube, and I'm not sure if me pouring out that 21-year-old Lucasade into those bushes was actually a criminal offence. Should I be getting a £150 fine for that? The concern here is that volunteer litter pickers could be one unfortunate encounter with an enforcement officer away from receiving £150 fines. Fines that would almost definitely be cancelled by the councils, since we're litter picking for the council. They know you're doing this as a good thing, so they're not going to enforce the fine, but that isn't a great solution to the problem, surely. So the question is now for litter pickers, should we be bagging up full bottles of water and occasionally human urine for some reason? Bottles of beer, cans of Red Bull, disposable coffee cups, ignoring the fact that all of these open containers are almost impossible not to spill. If you've ever tried to tug a bottle that's open out of a bush, you'll notice a lot of it spills as you're picking. Is that an offence? I've chatted to a lot of community members who have informed me that they are actually requested by their local councils not to bag up anything containing liquids. Some of them are required to empty those containers in order to make sure that the bags aren't too heavy. It's part of their risk assessment. A heavy bag is more likely to cause injury, it's more likely to spit, it's more likely to harm the volunteers, and it's also more likely to cause problems for the council workers who eventually collect those bags and take them to be disposed. So there's a lot of conflicting information out there at the moment. I've written to my local council and also to the National Enforcement Service, who kind of deal with the enforcement officers, and I haven't had a response yet. I just basically outlined the problem and why it's a concern for litter pickers, and is there any guidance? Are there any things that we should be aware of? Are there any protections or exemptions for people who are doing this service? And it's a little bit concerning, right, that this is something that there's no information about. The justification for these fixed penalty notices is that people should know better already, but when it comes to something like this, how are we supposed to know better? I've spent ages researching and trying to find out what the rules are, and there aren't any rules. Volunteer litter pickers now have to make a choice. I know what the choice I'm going to make is, and I'm going to continue to litter pick the way I do, and if I find a bottle of water or soft drinks, I'm going to pour them out so I can bag them. Litter pickers aren't going to stop doing what they do, but some of them are going to be doing it with a little bit of trepidation until we get some answers. If something is serious enough that you can be issued with a fine for doing it, then we need to know what the rules are. There needs to be a list of liquids that are acceptable. There needs to be a process for dealing with liquids that aren't. That's where I'm going to leave this video. I'd love to hear what you think. I think it's important to have a conversation about this. Did you know about the milk thing? This is the first sitting down talking to a camera video, and I hope people haven't hated it. We will also be returning to litter picking on this channel, but I want to mix in more of these conversations because they're really important and they tie into the whole act of us cleaning up the places that we live. I am still regularly picking, but the videos on litter picking are difficult for me to make at the moment due to the darkness, the rain, my camera having a hole in it. But litter picking will continue, and videos on that will happen as and when they can. But rather than leaving you with nothing, you'll probably get more videos like this for a while. There are a lot of topics I want to talk about. We've already alluded to the milk video. We also have other videos coming up on different topics, like the extended producer responsibility for packaging, on disposable vapes, on disposable coffee cups, on milk wastage, on all sorts of things related to legislation, to manufacturing, to people's attitudes. It's not just about picking up the litter, it's also about understanding how the litter is generated and why it's generated and why it ends up where it does. We can't change one thing, we need to change everything. So I'm hoping that this will be informative and help to spark more good conversations about that. Also, as a final note before I end this video, I will be making playlists, so stuff where it's like this will be in a talk playlist and litter picking will be in a litter picking playlist. So if you don't want to watch these videos, you don't have to. If you're only here for the litter picking, you can just go to that playlist. Please do leave a comment, let me know what you think about anything we've talked about and what sort of topics you might be interested in the future, because there are plenty of those coming. So that is it from me for now, and I hopefully will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.